Hi, this is Ed in San Diego, and today is April 3. Our very special guest today will be with us in a few minutes. His name is Paul Falcone, and many of you know him as a very senior HR leader for many years here in Southern California. Paul Falcone has been an executive at the highest levels within the entertainment industry, and we'll hear more about that from him. I just want to read a couple of things as a prep. HR is a balance between what the business needs and what the employees needs. How you bring those two pieces together will determine the solutions that you're able to enjoy. Excuse me. Well, Paul Falcone, Workplace Leadership Consulting, I'm going to read this. He writes that today's workforce is challenged by burnout, overwhelmed by workload, and feeling like they're somehow treading water career-wise. Maybe that's one of the reasons for the Great Resignation. But what about the layoffs? What do you think about that? Is that retaliation? Pruning the workforce? Bringing people back to the office? Maybe, maybe not. We'll discuss it with Paul Falcone. He says that's why strengthening the muscle of your organization's frontline operational leadership team is now more critical than ever. Paul's focus lies in re-engaging your management teams, honing their leadership and communication skills, and helping your managers become leaders, people who motivate and inspire people, coach, engage their teams to reach higher levels of achievement and productivity. Do you know managers who do that? Paul Falcone likewise teaches leaders how to minimize and insulate the organization from unnecessary liability. Paul Falcone is a renowned expert on effective hiring, performance management, and leadership development, specializing in helping companies build higher performing leadership teams. Paul has spent the last 3 decades in HR executive roles at the following organizations. I'm sure you're familiar with them: Nickelodeon, Paramount Pictures, NBC Universal, Time Warner, but also with the City of Hope Cancer Center Hospital. City of Hope is a major medical institution and charity in the LA area. Paul Falcone is also a best-selling HarperCollins leadership author. Really, 15 books and a 16th coming out this fall. He'll talk about that in just a few minutes. He's also a long-term speaker and contributing author to SHRM and other HR institutions. Paul is now working directly with several organizations of all sizes as a consultant to help them build effective leadership and management teams. I would say that's more powerful and more important now than ever. What do you think? We'll be right back with Paul Falcone. Thank you for being on Global TV Talk Show. I really appreciate it. More about that later. Okay, we're back here in San Diego, and Paul Falcone is with us in the Chicagoland area. Welcome, Paul.
Thanks, Ed. It's great to be here as always.
So I wanted to continue our conversations about your role as a CHRO, Chief Human Resource Officer, and now as an entrepreneur at paulfalconehr.com. Is that right?
It is. Thank you for the plug. I love it.
Yeah. So I just did a preview reading from your site to introduce you, so we don't have to waste time doing this right now. So people already know all about you. Okay, so there's needs of the corporation and there's needs of the employees, and you're right in the middle of that, aren't you?
Yeah, HR is a funny role. I mean, we are the bridge. We're the voice of the employees. We're the voice of management. We're the ones who are supposed to kind of tap into employee engagement levels and kind of figure out how do we customize what's going to work for our organization, whether you're looking at the benefits, or you're looking at the compensation, you're looking at leadership communication, you pick it. I think in a lot of ways that if there's a department out there that represents, for lack of a better term, maybe the soul or the spirit of the organization, or tries to embody its culture, it's oftentimes human resources.
Okay, so we're going to get into a couple of different things here, and we're going to make this a short program, 15, 20 minutes or so, and then you'll come back hopefully later in the month with a pickup and a review of what's going on in the new quarter. This is the start of the second quarter. First quarter after COVID,
Mhm.
is it like a new beginning or is it the same old stuff?
No, it actually is like a new beginning. There are a lot of organizations out there, Ed, that are trying to reinvent things. They're trying to reward, for example, their managers who gone through the whole COVID experience with them. People feel like they've been treading water career-wise for the last 3 years. What do we do to build the muscle? What do we do to get them re-engaged? How do we kind of put them in a learning curve? And that then trickles down, hopefully, from the management team to the rest of the staff. And there's a lot of that going on right now from what I can see as an independent consultant. That's where most of my work is coming from these days, is training and opportunities to grow that muscle. So it's an exciting time right now.
So the C-suite recognizes that their make or break is in middle management, right?
You would hope so. You would hope so. Sometimes I think, well, in my experience in 3 decades of doing human resources, sometimes the C-suite feels like it's acting despite middle management, which is a mistake. The culture of that company, the fabric of that company is the middle management, whether you're talking about the manager, supervisor level through the VP, senior VP, executive VP level. That's really where it happens. That's where people fall in love with a company or they don't. It doesn't happen at the C level typically. It's just too far away from the action.
And, you know, because people love the idea of the company, maybe they like the culture, but they can't stand their direct supervisor, right? The direct leader, and they wish that they would disappear.
Well, one of the things when you hit the nail on the head, this idea that when people fall in love with their boss, they fall in love with their company. But the main reason they'll leave an organization is because of lack of a relationship, whether it's lack of trust or lack of respect or just however, not enough recognition or appreciation, not enough communication. That's really where it breaks down. And I think that smart companies are realizing before you can roll out training to your staff, you've got to start with the managers and get them on board. Otherwise, you end up doing training to the staff, and the people come up to you afterwards and say, well, Paul, that sounds great, but would someone please tell my manager? Because he or she doesn't do that. So it's got to start at the management level and then move its way down. But I think we're at that place right now where companies want to talk about higher accountability and higher performance expectations. Also realizing that people are resume builders and they're LinkedIn builders. And what can we do to help you now to build on those skills that you already have, some of which may have atrophied and some of which may be stronger now because remote work and hybrid work has forced people to become better communicators and better relationship builders. But yes, it's a time to reassess and restart the relationship. So we're at a good point right now, I think,
So
an
we've had
inflection point.
we've had the great resignation, and now we're getting the great layoffs. Is that retribution?
No,
I was
it's not
just pruning, right?
it's pruning. When Elon Musk started I'm laying off 70% of Twitter, I think a lot of the Silicon Valley CEOs said, well, wait a second, if he can still keep it alive and he's cutting 70% of the staff, we don't want to go that far, but maybe we can start with 10, potentially work to 20% of our staff and see if we are overstaffed. Are we carrying too much? That then spreads, that contagion, so to speak, spreads from Silicon Valley to the rest of the country. Oftentimes things do start in California. It tends to be trendy that way. And now all organizations are sitting back and saying, well, wait a second, do we need all the people that we have? It's a phase. We'll go through these things. They're not going to know if they've cut back too much until they know. if they've cut back too much. We're going to see. But again, we're going through a time right now where people are getting whiplash. It's like the schizophrenic market. Everything we do, we go from talent scarcity to now we're doing layoffs. Oops, we laid off too many. Now we got to pull people back. Can we find them? How do we retain them? We're kind of fighting with ourselves a little bit, but a lot of this dysfunction comes as we basically step away from a once in a century type of pandemic, which has thrown everything off. And so we're still coming to terms with that.
Okay, now you're the author of 15 books, and number 16 is in the oven. Be ready
Very
in
good.
September, right?
Thank you, Ed. Yeah, absolutely.
What's the name of that?
Leading through crisis, which is something that I think we all need these days.
You wrote the book.
Yeah, well, I spoke to the folks at HarperCollins and I said, you guys, this book is needed. And they said, yeah, we think you're right. So that book is kind of written now and it's going through the editing phases. So
all right, so I'm not a flamethrower, today anyway, but so two of your books is offense, defense.
Right.
Okay, so now to you, that's going to mean something very unique. So please take us through a definition of the book about HR on the offense and then HR on the defense.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. And again, it's not even HR, it's leadership in general. I've always written for the general management audience. And the question is, using the sports metaphors, right? On offense, it's how do you grow talent, develop people? How do you coach them? How do you become someone's favorite boss? Excuse me. On the defense side, it's how do you hold people accountable? How do you hold tough conversations? How do you document things if something needs to move to termination? You need both the carrot and the stick. You can't just motivate everyone all the time and think you're going to have full success, but you certainly don't want to become known as a punitive manager who, as the expression says, if the only thing you have is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. And there are managers out there who just write up everybody all the time, and they're just using the stick and not the carrot. You have to know how to use both. Hopefully you end up with 80% carrot and 20% stick, but you can't say, I don't want a stick. You have to know how to do that piece of it too.
So that's theory here, just theory. You can't stand that person down the hall there, and you want to get rid of them, but you don't want to get sued. So you're going to be offense, and then at the same time defense. So is there, in your experience, how does the following idea work? You, rather than firing them as of 5 p.m., you put them in a new position where they're going to get upset and they're going to leave. And you avoid the...
Yeah, and the funny thing, they're calling it quiet firing now. Everything is quiet, right? Quiet quitting, quiet layoffs, quiet firing. Yeah, it doesn't really work that way. In reality, look, managers are known to look the other way, sweep things under the rug. You know that when you see people in an organization that have, for the most part, very difficult behaviors and conduct, and they're like, how has this person survived here 20 years? And it's because managers historically keep passing the torch, and all of a sudden you're the manager who inherits this person, and you're like, yikes. But you can't really say, well, I'm just going to make their lives so miserable they're going to leave. There's a legal concept known as constructive discharge, which is the same as wrongful discharge in terms of the remedies, that how they can sue you. But basically, constructive discharge says, yeah, the person left on their own, but any reasonable person would have left because the manager made the circumstances so intolerable. So I wouldn't rather recommend someone trying to do that out of sight, out of mind, give them a fake job, and then eliminate that fake job. First of all, it strips people of their dignity. That's not the kind of employer you want to be. But more importantly, yeah, someone's got to grab the bull by the horns. This person maybe has been transferred or hung around for 5 different generations of managers. When the person who receives that person or moves into a new department, you've got to handle that. You can't make them go away, sweep them under the rug. It doesn't work that way. Even if you didn't get bitten legally, that's not the kind of culture you want to have, and it's not the kind of reputation you want to have as a leader. So I'd highly recommend against any kind of gamesmanship that way to try and incentivize people to leave on their own.
So let's be positive for a moment here and help me define for our audience out there, and for me, the difference between coaching and mentoring.
Yeah, it would. The terms are usually used together. It's not. I don't want to make too much of a difference. When you're a coach, basically, a lot of times you're the coach who's managing an employee. You're helping the employee find his or her way, find their own traction to get something done. When you're a mentor, it's a little different. Sometimes you find it's an outside third party. It might be a senior vice president from another department who's willing to help up and comers in other areas with their professional development. So it depends. If it's the immediate supervisor, I typically refer to it as coaching. If it's someone outside of that immediate relationship that's helping someone, it's a little bit more like mentoring, but there's usually not that formal supervisory connection. But again, I don't differentiate too much on that, Ed, because the spirit is the same. It's trying to help people find their way and having them benefit from your experience to coach them and guide them and be that source to help them grow.
Would you discover what needs to be done in terms of mentoring coaching with a direct report through Zoom, or would you want to do it in person?
No, you could do it via Zoom. I mean, in general, these kinds of discussions are better to have in person. We know that. But we also know that it's like if you're not working on site for whatever reason and you're working remotely, you can't take that as an approval not to have the conversations. So what I've always recommended as a rhythm is for managers to make space to meet with their direct reports once a quarter. Put the burden on the subordinate, put the burden on the employee to set the time on the calendar, put the burden on the employee to build the content for what person wants to talk about. But that puts you as the manager in the role of a coach and a mentor. Book 30 minutes on the calendar, probably won't even take 20 minutes. But find out how they're doing towards their goals. Find out if they want to do any kind of education, credentialing, certifications, whatever it happens to be. Find out if what they're doing in their job matches where their personal interests are. Do they want more organizational exposure? What can you do to help them in terms of building that muscle? And the funny thing is, when you look at the millennials and the Gen Z, the 45 and under and the 25 and under, basically, one of the top 5 things that they want, Ed, over and over again, is they want career and professional development. All you have to do is make the space for them to develop themselves. That's all you need to do. And then you can say, yeah, and we've got tuition reimbursement. Let me help you with that. Or if you think you'd like to rotate just for a half day in another part of the company to mirror someone else, to see if you like doing what they do, I'll set that up for you. But
Boy, that's a wonderful
things,
thing. That's really, I wish I had you for a boss many years ago. Good.
Well, what can I say? Yeah. But the funny thing, Ed, is it's kind of commonsensical. It's sensical.
Yeah.
This isn't radical. Just be there for them, right? When people say, Paul, I'm an insurance adjuster and I do personal lines. I'd love to see what it's like on commercial. Or I'd love to sit in underwriting and understand what they do. Or I've got a trip coming up to the corporate office and I'd like to meet somebody. You can facilitate those things, but you won't know unless you ask. You've just got to make the space for people to say, are you able to do your best work every day with peace of mind? That simple question, are you able to do your best work every day? You will be surprised what you hear. And people will come back with you with things and you might say, wow, I really didn't know that. I'm glad I happened to ask. But just taking that time, that's what it means to be a great boss. It means listening to your people. The respect is given, right? It's there. And now you're there to help them get what they want, which ultimately will make them better performers and make you look better and be better for the organization.
Well, thanks for this flash bang
Flash.
conversation.
That's right. That's right.
And, so let's go back to your new book. Okay. And it's what, a couple of 100 pages. So that means what, 20 chapters or something. So how do you fill that up with stuff that people already think they know about what happened?
Oh, on the crisis stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, people kind of know, but here's the thought. The bottom line to all of this, Ed, is look, part of it says you don't need any books. You can figure this out on your own. But when you look at the number of leadership books out there and management and all these other kinds of things, communication, why do they have them? So that someone like me, who's had 3 decades of experience, can instill the high points so that you can benefit from that and you don't have to go through everything by learning it yourself the hard way. That's all it is. So when you look at the way the way I set up this book was there's individual crises, there's departmental crises, and there's company crises. And the company crises include global crises. It's like, how do we deal with these things when they come our way? And you need to know how to do that. You want to be able to shortcut it. And so a lot of my books have numbers in the title. This one doesn't, but a lot of my books do. And it's like, you don't have to read from page 1 to page 242 to figure out what's going on. Just get me to what I need. This book is kind of structured the same way. It's like, well, oh, wait, they're organizing my company. I think my employees are talking with a union. This has nothing to do with whether you agree with unions, but management doesn't want a union. So if you get that comes your way, quick, what do we do? Those kinds of things. It's like, you can take employees through the way I've set it up. What happens when you find out the company is organizing? What are your rights and responsibilities? What can you do? What shouldn't you do? Then the next piece is when they're going through the organizing campaign itself and your employees are coming to you and asking you for advice, what can you say? What shouldn't you say? And the same thing if the company is going through a decertification process where the employees are trying to oust a union. Just as an example, do you know what you can say and what you should not say? And it's not even what you should not say. There are certain things that are actually unlawful for you to say. I don't want managers to have to figure that out on their own. It's like, give me a quick 3 sections on this, 12 pages, but like, let me nail down what's going on. And then you just keep mapping that out over crisis after crisis after crisis. This is just an example with the union piece. But it's important that managers have shortcuts in life. If they can hit the button that says, quick, get me the answer that I need, I only have 10 minutes. That's a strategy for the writing for me.
Let's talk about innovation. That's a big word that could mean anything. And one of your chapters here are a book title, Fostering Teamwork to Encourage Innovation. You know people in the organization. So does that mean you put a person from here and a person from there to see how they may work together or on the same team?
Yeah, I mean, it could. There's different ways to do it. But the way I've always described it is innovation comes in thousands of little pieces every day. It's not like all of a sudden a new Tesla pops up at the end of a conveyor belt. It can take years for that to happen. And what's important is when you want to get to a point where people are giving discretionary effort, where people are taking reasonable risks at raising their hand and coming up with suggestions. Because what I always tell managers is, like it or not, you are probably not the ones where the innovation is going to come from. You're too far from the business. You're either too far from the customers if you oversee customer service people, or you're too far from the manufacturing if you oversee people working in a plant. Your job is to tease information out of others, is to tease suggestions out of them for great ideas. If people are afraid that they're going to be punished or publicly humiliated by coming up with a stupid suggestion, they ain't going to do that. They're not going to say a thing. If they feel like, no, Paul's got my back, I trust him. We all come up with ideas. Some work, some don't, but we all feel like we can express ourselves and make suggestions to make the place a better place. That's where the innovation happens. It's right there at the front line. And a good manager is going to know that. And a good manager is going to build the trust and the respect and the relationships so that people feel safe coming forward with new ideas. That's the innovation. It can turn into a new car. It can turn into a new software system. It can turn into a new whatever. But it's only going to be there if you create the right circumstances for people to make themselves vulnerable in a healthy sense, where they're willing to share. And so that's really where I focus on in terms of creativity and innovation.
Paul Falcone can be reached on LinkedIn, and it's paulfalconehr.com.
That is it. You got it memorized, Dad. I love it.
Get it all there. I'm trying to be a happy TV talk show host.
You always are. You always are. I love coming on your show.
Thank you. And come back again, please.
I will. Thank you. I thank you for everything.
Paul Falcone. Have a good day.
You too. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks.